Let's talk about curse technique reversal, like Gojo's Red. This is such a cool concept that Gege introduced, but unfortunately doesn't showcase very often. So I get asked all the time about what my thoughts are on some hypothetical reversals of some of the most popular techniques. So in this video, we're going to go over several of those that you guys have asked me about, and also some random mishmash questions as well. So for my anime onlys out there, some of these hypothetical reversals are going to be for characters that you don't know yet. So if you don't want to know about their techniques, then this video is not for you, but we're not going to get into any story context. So to kick off this video, we've got this question from Robin, which asks, if reverse curse technique is a given, then could any curse technique have a reversal? And I think yes, based on what we know about how this process works. Now, this answer is going to be anime friendly here. So I think there's two reasons why we just haven't seen that many reversals. And the first is that reverse curse technique in and of itself is extremely rare, right? In the anime thus far, we have only ever seen Gojo perform the curse technique reversal, aka his Red, right? But that's mainly because he's one of the only characters that can even do reverse curse technique. And just in case anybody's confused by the lingo here, really quick breakdown. Reverse curse technique is the act of creating positive cursed energy that's also used for healing. Curse technique reversal is then using that positive energy you created from reverse curse technique and funneling that through your curse technique to reverse it. So just because you can do RCT doesn't necessarily mean you have a curse technique reversal. For example, somebody like Shoko, who doesn't have a curse technique, but she is, a savant at the reverse curse technique. So she doesn't have a curse technique reversal because she doesn't have a curse technique to begin with, right? So anyway, the first reason is not many people can even do reverse curse technique, so they can't do their reversal. But on top of that, just conceptually, it is pretty difficult to think about what the reversals of some of these techniques would be. So that could be another reason that Gege has maybe shied away from it. All right, so our first what if is brought to us by Kimo, and he wants to know what would the reversal of Angel's technique be? And Angel's technique is nullification, which is basically just the straight up deletion or negation of Jujutsu. We're talking cursed techniques, cursed objects, she can ignore barriers, destroy seals, you get it, right? So what is the reversal of nullification? The first thing that came to my mind was amplification. And kind of in line with what you're saying here, maybe she has the potential of restoring things since normally she takes them away. So that makes perfect sense to me in a Toto situation where he has a curse technique, but it's been damaged. So maybe she could heal it. Like maybe it's a de facto soul RCT kind of. I don't think it would only be limited to that. And I also don't think that she could take a non-sorcerer, for example, use the amplification and just give them a curse technique. I don't think it would work that way. So it would work on people like Toto, and maybe for normal, healthy curse technique people, maybe it just gives them some sort of boost or stat buff or something. I don't know. I would love to hear y'all's ideas on this, but I definitely like what you're thinking, and I definitely think it would be in the amplification realm. Next up, we got a couple of questions from JC. The first one is, what would the reversal of blood manipulation be? And this one I was racking my brain on because there is no clear conceptual reversal of blood manipulation, right? So in this case, I just tried to think of something that's kind of in the same theme, but also more powerful, because we know that reverse curse technique, one, is very hard to do, and two, at least in Gojo's case, red is more powerful than blue. So I came up with water manipulation. Now I know that seems really bland, but the body is 70 or 80% water, right? So think about just the more acute maneuvers you could do with that larger arsenal, if you will. You can still control blood, but now you can also control basically everything else, right, in your body, and maybe even, water outside of your body. I was thinking maybe blood manipulation reversed means you could control other people's blood, which would certainly be really powerful, but it just didn't seem different enough to go that route. But I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on that one. Next, JC wants to talk about Hakari. And Hakari's curse technique is all about gambling, right? That good luck, hitting jackpots, getting buffed up. So I absolutely agree with you that the reverse of that should be giving bad luck to his opponents. Now, how exactly mechanically this would work or what it would look like, I don't know, but just conceptually, it would be really cool if maybe even his opponents were in there cranking the slot machines, and with each loss, they like got a stacking debuff or something like reduced cursed energy or reduced stamina or something like that. Maybe lose access to certain abilities they have one at a time. And of course, the odds would be stacked against them, just like they are stacked for Hakari. So I love that idea. And then for this second half of your question here about disaster curses, for anybody that needs more context, I put out a video a couple days ago on disaster curses, so check that out if you're interested. But yeah, I agree with everything you say here. Like all of those curses would be special grade and gnarly. And you would certainly think that there is both a like generalized fear of war curse out there and specifically a nuclear warhead one. Now, why those didn't show up on screen in the story of Jujutsu Kaisen is probably just because they didn't serve the narrative and that's not the story Gege was telling, right? But like theoretically, conceptually, it would make sense for those to exist. Now, the COVID-19 one wouldn't exist just because JJK takes place in like 2018, I think is where it's currently set. So COVID hasn't happened yet. But certainly once it did, I think that would be a curse as well. I mean, we even saw the curse associated with smallpox, I believe, in Shibuya. So certainly like prominent diseases like that would have curses. Next up, we got a few questions here from Kyle, so let's run through these one by one. The first is that how was Sukuna able to revive Yuji even after Yuji had been gone for some amount of time, right? He was just laying on that operating table. Everyone thought he was gone, and then he comes back. So shouldn't too much time have passed there? Shouldn't he be brain dead? And I would say, in a realistic scenario, yes. But what we're told in the story is that he was basically safely harbored away inside of Sukuna's innate domain. So even though his physical brain wasn't in the innate domain, it was more of like a spiritual, ethereal type of situation that for some reason kind of protected him from the effects of death normally, if you will. On top of that, we also don't know exactly how much time passed. It obviously wasn't an amount of time that would make sense in the real world for somebody to get brought back, but it may have only been like an hour or, a couple. It certainly wasn't like a week or anything, right? So all those factors combined with, also the fact that this is a fictional, story with superpowers and healing, I think we just have to chalk it up to that. There is no better explanation given. Next up, you ask, why does Hakari look completely different in Season 1 when Gojo mentions him? And the simple answer is just that's the art style that Mappa decided to go with. But considering they completely switched up the art style for Season 2, chances are when we see Hakari in Season 3, he's not going to look like what we saw in Season 1. And again, depending on what you were comparing this to, whether it be the manga or certain fan art that's out there, it's just hard to say. Because a lot of fan art draws Hakari, or colors Hakari at least, very differently, all sorts of hair colors. So it'll be interesting to see what we get in Season 3. Next up, can you talk about Mahito and Junpei's conversation? Yeah, I think this was mainly a service to the narrative foil between Yuji and Mahito. They are like exact opposites in their beliefs, right? And Junpei is used as a character to kind of reflect off of both of them to see the different like ideals they live by. Of course, Mahito is more like, down with it all, it's all meaningless, where Yuji is like, all about love and shows Junpei that like he can have friends. So I think that was like the purpose of that character. But I talk more about how Yuji and Mahito are foils in my video on the I'm you moment, so check that out if you're interested. For your next question on Mahito, if he hadn't been Uzumaki'd, I would imagine that he would retain his intelligence, but he would be more akin to like an AI version of himself, because we know curses once absorbed can't grow. So if he's just was his normal self, it wouldn't make sense that he couldn't like learn and evolve. So I think it would best be compared to an AI. And then what would the reversal of 10 shadows be? This is one I get a lot, and it's really interesting to think about. But the first thing my mind jumps to is some form of light manipulation, right? The opposite of a shadow. So if he can create the Shikigami from shadows, maybe he can create another set of Shikigami from light. I think that would be really cool. Plus whatever just cool stuff he could do with light, similar to how he can move and store stuff in his shadows. That would be my best guess. And then for your final question on the Gojo clan, I actually did a video on like where is the rest of the Gojo clan, so I will link that down in the comments below. And then before our last one today, y'all, I do need to give a spoiler warning. If you're an anime only or you have not caught up on the manga, you need to head out because these are some big spoilers. So Daruno poses that Higuruma's reversal could be a life sentence as opposed to the death sentence, and you could judge somebody based on their good deeds and then perhaps revive them instead of, taking them out. And I think this is a really clever and creative twist on Higuruma's curse technique. For my money, personally, I wouldn't see it going that way in terms of like that being what happens to revive Gojo, but I think that's a really cool concept. I like the idea of Higuruma being like a forgiveness instead of a condemnation for the normal curse technique. Like he can forgive you and maybe you get some bonus or buff or even revived. So I like this a lot. Thanks again, Legends, and I'll see y'all in the next one.